Hey, everybody. On the Run with Beards and Dunn's back again. Hey, Beards, how's your day going?
Hey, good, Dunn. I had just wonderful folks that were staying at our Lake Bemidji bed and breakfast, and they're from Olathe, Kansas.
Wow.
Right out, yeah. And so I took Bob, the husband, out on a little lake north of town, and it was gorgeous. We caught a bunch of big crappies. There were a couple bald eagles flying around. We had a loon that kept popping up around the boat. I mean, you couldn't ask for much nicer morning to be out on the water, that's for sure.
Beards, I got to admit, there's part of me that really wishes we were back closer to you. I'd love to go out fishing with you, especially this time of the year when being out on the water, it's got to be just gorgeous.
Well, you know, the last couple of years when you've come up for our Beardsley races, and then you and Karen come to the inn, and we have so much fun out there fishing.
It is. And if anybody's listening, if you ever want to go fishing with somebody who knows how to catch fish, I got to give Dick a lot of credit. We've gone fishing with him several times. We've never gotten skunked. If Beards doesn't find fish within 10 or 15 minutes, we're moving and we're going to go find some fish.
That's right. We're going to go find them.
And I tell you what, even if you're not a fisherman, you're going to have a great time. It's so much fun. And, you know, I always thought fishermen had to be like stone quiet and be quiet. You can't talk and stuff. I think that's duck hunting or something like that. But Beards is, you know, if you want to chit-chat.
It's story time, baby.
It's story time. And so you're fishing and swapping stories. And I tell you, it is so much fun. I'd encourage anybody to do it.
You know, so yesterday I had two brothers out, and they were both runners, and in the past, and they still do it. Well, the one brother, he just retired, so the other brother flew in from North Carolina where he lives, and they surprised him, and they gave, because they said one time, they came and ran the Beardsley races a few years ago in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, and they always said to each other, wouldn't it be so cool to go fishing with Dick? So his brother flew in to Minneapolis unexpectedly. He shows up at his brother's house, and he hands him this envelope. It's something about fishing with Dick Beardsley. And he goes, yeah, wouldn't that be the dream? And he goes, pack your bags, buddy. We're leaving in 30 minutes.
He'd already set it up.
He'd already set it up back in April. So
awesome.
we were walleye fishing for 6 hours. We caught a bunch of fish, and the stories that we were all swapping, it was so gosh darn much fun.
It is good. You know, I'm looking at retiring one of these days. You might have to build onto your bed and breakfast. We might have a permanent spot up there through the summer.
Well, I got the man.
I'm not staying up there in the winter months. I don't.
No,
care.
I got the man cave where I'm sitting right now, Mike. Plenty of room for you and Karen.
Yeah, we'll bunk in. All right. Well, hey, let's kind of back up. You know, last week we talked about our good friend Al Stropmeyer.
Right.
And that was really, I appreciate, you know, everybody indulging me and just sharing. I think Al was just one of a kind, and he was such a nice, kind individual, and such a fun guy to hang out with. And like I said in the podcast, I think about him all the time and miss him. And you know, that's kind of our message, is get out there and have fun and enjoy life. And you know, talking about, you know, let's kind of carry on, Beards. You last time we talked about the run-in, you had run Houston and Beppu within a month of each other. Then we hooked up down at Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yes.
And it was February 28th. It was the last day of February.
February 28th.
Well, and then I'm going to just be honest. I got injured shortly thereafter. You know, this is a story of my life. I was in my best shape of my life, and I think I had a hard time taking a break. It was winter still. It was February. I strained a hamstring right up at the upper attachment, right in my, be honest with you,
I remember that.
Butt. And running was impossible. I remember
it
when
took
I did it.
you like a year to recover, I remember.
Forever. It took all of 1981. It was very discouraging. I remember I was out on a run when it tore, and Beards, I couldn't even, I thought, well, I had to walk 2.5 miles to get back to my apartment where Karen and I were living, and I couldn't run. I could not run.
No,
I went to a
remember that.
I tried to let it heal. Long story, doesn't matter. I was laid up.
Well done.
Yeah, go ahead.
Could it have been because of this? So on I'm looking at my logbook from 1981. So Saturday, February 28th, 1981, I run 48:25. You run 49 and
42,
change. I turned the page. You know what you and I did Sunday morning?
I have no recollection.
I've got it written down. 20-mile run with Dunn. The day after we just got done running a hard, fast race.
You would have thought we'd take an easy run, a 5 to 10 mile run maybe that day, kind of relaxed.
Oh, my goodness.
Right back on the horse.
Yep.
And, yeah, and it was winter. It was February, and and we'll get into that. Training in the Midwest and the northern states.
Right.
It's a real challenge, and you have to kind of use your head, and I'm not sure I did. The enthusiasm sometimes got the better of me.
Me too.
I got hurt. But, okay, so March 1st rolled around. You and I did a 20. I got injured sometime in March. And then the next thing I hear is Dick is going to go run the London Marathon. And if people don't know, I mean, everybody knows the London Marathon today. That course has produced several world records.
Right.
Runs. And it was the first London Marathon in 1981.
Yes.
And Dick Beardsley was there. And I really don't remember, Dick. How did London happen? I've got some questions here. How did you get in? Did you get invited? Did you call them up and say, "Hey, I heard you're having a race. I'd like to come run it"?
No.
How did this transpire?
So, okay. So, I ran for New Balance.
Right.
And so New Balance European distributor was a guy named Chris Brasher from London.
He paced Roger Bannister to the first
right.
4-minute mile.
And he was a 1956 steeplechase gold medalist
right.
for London. So, Chris was the New Balance distributor over in Europe. So he calls New Balance. He says, "Hey, we're putting on this brand new marathon called the London Marathon. Do you have any athletes that would maybe be interested in coming over?" So they called me up and they go, "Hey, Dick, how would you like to go to London, England and run the first ever London Marathon?" I said, "Heck yeah!"
Now, what time of the what time would you do? Remember specifically? Was it March, April? Because the race was in May.
Yeah. So the very first one, I'm looking at my logbook right now, was Sunday, March 29th.
No way.
Yes.
You had ran Beppu like late January, 1st of February.
No, it was. I ran around the 8th of February.
Oh my gosh.
I ran Beppu.
Because I know Houston was like mid-January.
And then 3 weeks later I ran Beppu, and then I get this invite to go to London. Well, I'm like starry-eyed, bushy-tailed, and they go, "Yeah, well, they'll fly you over and put you up," and I thought, heck yeah, I'd never been to London before.
Wow. So you put this on your calendar.
Yep.
And now you had, how much time do you think pre-race to train? I don't know if you were always training.
Well, here's what I did.
Yeah.
So done. So after our race in the Statehood Days 10-miler in Lincoln, Nebraska,
right.
The next day we do a 20-miler in the morning, and I did another 4 miles easy that afternoon. On Tuesday, I did 12 miles of hard fartlek. I had 132 miles in that week. So then the following week, I wrote on here, getting ready for the Jacksonville 15K River Run, which is a huge race. So I did another 20-miler on that Sunday. Then on that Saturday was the 15K road race, and I finished 7th that day. And here's the guys that were some notable runners, and any diehards that go back for that. Dan Dillon was in the race, John Sinclair, Benji Durden, Kyle Hefner, Bobby Hodge, Rick Rojas, Dick Berkeley, Steve Floto, and some other top runners. And I finished, actually 6th. Because me and Dick Berkeley, sub 4-minute miler, we tied.
Oh my!
Yeah.
It's sad. He just passed away a few months ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was bald-headed.
Yes.
That was unusual back in the.
A nice
70s.
guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He was a great. He had the indoor, I think, American record for sure in the mile at one time.
And so I run Jacksonville, run 44:48 for 15K. Next morning, I get up and I do a 15-miler. Okay. And another 5 later in the day. Then on Tuesday, the 17th of March, I do a 20-miler. And then 5 miles later in the day. And then I'm looking at my logbook here. So then the following week was my taper week to get ready for London. So from the 22nd of March, and London was on Sunday the 29th. So my taper week, I did 71 miles that week.
Wow, you
and
took it
I know
easy.
a lot of people think 71 miles for a taper week. But, Don, as you know, when you're running 130, 140 miles a week, 70 miles seems like you're not doing anything.
You're just coasting. I forgot it was that early in the year.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So you tapered for London. Do you remember how early over Mary didn't get to go? I know with work. We got into that work training life that you guys had to support yourselves.
Right.
And so I know Mary had taken, I think she was working at a bank and things like that.
She was.
Yeah, and so getting time off is always going to be a kind of tough. So you went by yourself?
So I went by myself. So I got over there on Tuesday, March 24th, and on my logbook I go, just got to London and very tired. So I probably went and took a nap, and I did a 10-mile run later that day. And then the next day, a 7 and a 6, a 5 and a 6. And then Friday, I just ran 6. Saturday, I ran 4. And then Sunday was the race.
You must have been like a little Energizer bunny, fully charged.
Done. So, okay. So they picked me up at the Heathrow airport, and they take me into London. And they put me up in this hotel. And honest to gosh, the bed was so small I had to sleep in the fetal position with my legs bent. They gave me enough money to buy a couple of hamburgers a day, and I was tickled pink. So that whole time before the race, when I got there, I went out and sightseed and took in all the neat things in London and everything, and then race day. Man, I was pretty fired up.
So and again, I asked some hard questions that maybe are inappropriate. There was no appearance money given. Did they say, hey, Dick, if you come, we'll make it worth your while?
No, I didn't get a nickel, and I don't think anybody else did, too. The fact that, New Balance had asked me to do it because of Chris Brasher, and, of course, I would have done anything for New Balance. And the fact that, it wasn't costing me anything, and plus the first London Marathon, and I knew it was probably going to get, a lot of coverage on television and newspapers, things like that.
All right. Now, just kind of, I appreciate you sharing I love the fact you have your training log in front of you. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Now, I have a couple questions about, I've had people ask me over the years, weights, resistance training, strength training.
Right.
I know you had a routine, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you're notorious for doing a lot of crunches, man. Sit-ups.
Yeah.
Is that
what It was. The only thing I did, I never lifted weights. Mm-hmm. I didn't do any push-ups or anything like that. But I do now. I do 23 push-ups every day. And you probably know why that number I do. I do 23 push-ups every day for the 22 veterans that take their life every day, and the and the one present-day service person that takes their life. So I do 23 of those, and then I do about 400 to 500 crunches every day.
400 or 500 crunches. That's now. How many were you doing back in the day? About the same, or?
Yeah, probably about the same. But done. If I had any extra time in the day, I just would go and run more miles.
Yeah, we've talked about that. If we had an extra half hour to go lift weights, I'd have just went and did 5 more miles.
Exactly.
And plus, I think you kind of grew up in a rural, you loved hanging out on farms.
Right.
And so you just naturally was always doing physical labor through
Yeah.
your high school and even
Right.
in college.
Oh, yeah. So, you pitching bales or pitching manure by a pitchfork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You feed them in one end and you have to clean up out
Exactly.
the other end. Cool.
And, no skid loader or anything like that. It was all by hand,
now,
manual
these
labor.
120 to 140 mile weeks you were doing there in early, let's just say January through March,
Yeah.
April of 81. Any training partners? Did you have any regular guys that you
No.
hook up with?
No.
You were on your own, bud.
I pretty much, I would say over 95% of the time I was running on my own back then. And the only really time I really ran with anybody was like when you and Karen would come to visit.
Sure.
Or we'd go down and visit you guys.
All right. Well, all right. That's amazing. All right. Now, I'm just going to cut to some good stuff. We're going to try to get the link on our site, and I'll probably try to put this on our Facebook posts and stuff. If you go to YouTube and put in London Marathon 1981, they actually have some great footage.
Yes.
Because the technology in the early 80s, it's really good. I don't know. They must have been showing that race live. And
they did.
It's recorded. And it says London Marathon 1981 on YouTube, Part 1 and Part 2. it's about 30 minutes. I never found part 2 yet, but it's all combined into one chunk, and we'll put on there. It's a pretty good. I don't know, documentary, if you would.
It is.
And, Beards, you're on it probably 9, 10, 11 segments. They talk a lot about...
Right.
They always refer to you as the American.
Yes.
I don't know if you were I'm sure there were other Americans, but you were the only top-level American in the field.
Yes.
Now, I know that Inge Simonsen and Trevor Wright, they had finished 6th and 7th at New York when you finished 9th.
Right.
But they were right ahead of you. I think Inge ran like 2:13.28. Trevor Wright had ran 2:13.31. You were at 2:13.55.
Yes.
So you guys were all, right in a little bunch there. And then you're going over to London, and I don't know, did you know these guys are running? I'm sure they had
no idea.
You didn't know who was lining up.
No.
Wow.
Had no idea.
See, nowadays they always, you get a list of the starters.
Oh, for
and you'd
sure.
be studying like, oh, geez, let's see who's here in the field and stuff. But you lined up and looked around and said, oh, I recognize a couple of these guys.
Well, but I'd never met Inge or Trevor Wright, so I didn't know who they even were. But I was told that by Chris Brasher, the race director, that there's going to be some, good European runners that'll be going up against you. So, I'm thinking, hey, that's great, bringing them on, and let's go have at it.
Well, in those days, I think you'd and I think you alluded to this earlier, you were there to race. You weren't there to run a time. You didn't have splits written down your arm.
Nope.
You weren't going to try to, run at a set pace or whatever. You were just going to race it.
Exactly, and that was my vision going in, and so when the race took off, I kind of shot right out to the front. I wanted to make sure the pace was at a pretty good clip.
Well,
and now this is back. So it was the very first London Marathon. So there was a lot of turns on it. Not like it is, years later where they make it as straight as can be. So there were a lot of turns because they wanted to take us by all the historical places around London. So, and it was a rainy, wet day and kind of chilly. And I remember, the tabloid newspapers in the U.S. are terrible. Over in England, they're 10 times worse. And I'm reading the papers leading up to the race, and they were criticizing Chris Brasher and John Disley, the co-race director, that nobody's going to run this race, nobody's going to come out and cheer, and there was over 1 million spectators that day in the rain, and over 7,000 runners, which was a lot of runners back then.
You gotta love the media. They love a good controversy.
Absolutely.
They couldn't say this is fantastic and isn't this cool and all that sort of stuff.
Not until afterwards.
Okay. Now, if anybody's listening, and I sure hope everybody does this, we'll have the link, or just go to YouTube, put in London 1981, get a bowl of popcorn and a cool beverage, and it's only 30 minutes. And I even went through and marked. I haven't written down the time segments whenever Beards comes on the screen, and because then they do a few human interest stories in 30 minutes.
Yes,
and there's nothing wrong with watching.
No,
those. It's pretty cool. But if you want to if you're limited time, you can kind of cut through and see where Dick's at. But Beards, you were the mover and the shaker. And go ahead and just go from the gun. How did the morning of the race? Take us through that day.
So like I said, it was rainy and not heavy rain, but just kind of a constant mist and light rain. And the excitement there for this first London Marathon was amazing. And they started this inside on this big green park area, and when the gun went off, you had to go through these
gates, arches.
These gates.
Yeah, this on the video. It shows. Yeah,
and so we get out on the road, and almost right away, I'm right up in front, and I'm kind of pushing the pace, and for some reason, everybody was keying off of me. Yep. So they were sucked in right behind me, and we had a pretty large pack. So we're going across the Tower Bridge at about halfway, and there's still like 10 guys or so in the lead group. So I'm thinking, okay, this is way too many people. So about 3/4 of the way across the Tower Bridge, I put the hammer down and opened up a gap, and the only person that came with was Inge Simonsen from Norway. So when you come off the Tower Bridge, we took this right-hand turn. And for the next number of miles, we went way down along the Thames River and then made a turn and came basically back the same direction on just a different street. Back then, that whole area was all boarded up old factories and buildings. There was no spectators down in there. Now it's one of the most desirable places to live and everything. Oh, wow. But back then, so we come back and we go underneath the Tower Bridge and right by this big old castle and stuff. And we're running for about the next mile and a half. We're running on cobblestone. Oh. And, we're talking cobblestone that's been put down a zillion years ago.
And so wet.
It's wet. Uneven. It's wet. It's like walking onto an ice rink without skates on. So we finally get off of that, and I'm doing everything I can to try to break Inge, but then he's pushing the pace too. If I backed off a little bit, then he'd pick up the pace. He was never in front of me, but we were mainly running side by side. So we're somewhere with about maybe a half mile to go. And we're running side by side. And I remember turning to him and saying, so I think I said something like, "What do you think?" And Inge turned to me and he spoke a broken English. He might as well been talking Japanese or Chinese.
They actually show this on the video, and they go, and I can't remember what the announcers say, but they say something about, are these guys swapping stories or you can see you talking to one another.
And so Inge was talking to me, but I couldn't understand him. And so anyhow, we're coming down towards the finish line. And because when I said, so what do you think? I'm thinking, are we going up sprinting to the end? Right. Are we coming in together or what? And then he said, again, he said something to me and I have no idea what he said. So I'm on his right, he's on my left. We're heading towards the finish line, and the people are going nuts. And we weren't even looking at each other then. And it was like my left arm came down, like, my stride, and Inge's right. And right at the last second, we clasped hands, went up in the air like this, and our chests both broke the tape at the same time.
It's a great shot, and you can kind of see. He understood. You understood. It was an unspoken sportsman gesture.
Yes.
And
done.
The announcers thought it was awesome. A lot of people might, oh geez, you guys wimped out. You didn't sprint it out. Somebody just got to. I hate to say it, our American culture. There's got to be a winner and there's got to be a loser.
Right.
And no, there doesn't. Everybody,
but done.
You guys.
When
were awesome.
The next morning, that picture of him and I coming up with our arms breaking the tape was in newspapers all over the world, and it wasn't because we won the first London Marathon, but it was because I'm from the U.S., Inge was from Norway, and this sportsmanship. Exactly. But, Dunn, I got to tell you this. Inge and I were not halfway through the chute. Remember Fred Lebo?
Sure.
Fred started the New York City Marathon, and they brought Fred over there to kind of help him, organize it and put it on because he was such a good, and I knew Fred. He comes sprinting into the finish chute, and he starts yelling at me. He goes, "Beardsley, that would never happen in the New York City Marathon. You would have both been disqualified." And I remember looking at Fred. I said, "Fred, it's never going to happen to me again either. But this time it just felt like the right thing to do."
Well, they called it the hand of friendship.
Yes.
And it's still to this day. They talk about it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the finisher medals that they gave, was that just 1 year that I remember seeing a picture of a finisher medal from London, and it's that image of you and Inge coming across with your hands joined.
So done. Every 5 years, we are so blessed, Inge and I and our families. They bring Inge and I over every 5 years to celebrate that very first year. Now, listen, we ran 2:11:48 that day.
Right.
It's the slowest winning time ever at the London Marathon. But they go, and Hugh Brasher, his dad, Chris, who started the race, has passed away. So his son, Hugh, has taken over the race.
Oh, cool.
He goes, "Dick," he goes, "it's the slowest race ever, but there will never be a first-time winners of the London Marathon." So at the 35th anniversary, they bring Inge and his family back. They bring me and my family back. And the whole theme of that year's marathon was that hand of friendship. Every T-shirt that every runner got was that picture of me and Inge. The medals that the 50,000 people got were that image. And Dunn, we were over there for a week, and I don't know what it's like to be a rock star, but if Inge and I, we would be walking around London somewhere, and people were coming up and wanting autographs because they had promoted this. And
that is so cool.
And even non-runners, it was just an amazing thing.
You know, and in the video on YouTube, they interview you right after the finish. It bears the adrenaline, the energy you're projecting.
What did I say? I don't even remember.
I would have thought you were, you had a few brewskis in you or something like that. But I mean, you were very, and it's so fun to watch because you were just so full of life. You know, how exciting you and Inge coming across. Now, Inge doesn't speak a lick of English, correct?
Well,
very broken.
I mean, very broken English. But I mean, now I see him. We become very good friends, and he speaks pretty good English now. But back then, it was very more broken type.
So when the media wants to talk to you guys, and I think this has happened, when Salazar wasn't able to speak after Boston, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. You were the only guy they had to interview.
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of thinking over in London, did you kind of find the English reporters are like trying to get a translator over there to ask Inge a few questions where you're able to just jabber away as much as they want you to.
Well, and Dunn, you know me for 50 years almost. I'm not afraid to open my jaws.
But you're a good interview. So how was the media demand? After
it
that?
Was unbelievable. I mean, the newspapers over there, the television stations, radio stations. Even when I got back to the U.S., I was getting requests for interviews and things like that. It was absolutely amazing, to be honest with you.
So, and maybe your memory is a lot better than mine. You call Mary? Do you call Bill, Coach Squires? Do you call your folks? How does I think I heard, I was at, I think I was working at Athletic Attic. And
I'm surprised I didn't call you, too.
Yeah, and I think somebody, maybe it was you, but somebody called the store, called Karen, and Karen called me. And it was just, we were over the moon. But how did that all play out? Do you remember?
Well, yeah. So I remember, I think the first person I called was my mom. And she was so gosh dang excited. And then I called my dad. And then I probably called Coach Squires. I'm sure I must have tried calling you or Karen or something. And it was, and my mom was crying on the phone, and I was probably crying too. I mean, I had never, that was the first time I'd won a marathon. And I didn't even win it by myself. I tied.
Right. You won. Yeah, tie it's the first place. Do you remember the award ceremony? Did you get some good swag?
No. So, you know what? I don't now, there probably was. I do not remember going to like an awards ceremony. I remember when we got done with the race, I put my sweats on, and Joyce Smith was the first women's winner of the London Marathon, and Joyce was from England, and so they had lots of pictures of me, Inge, and Joyce, and I remember they had for the winner they had the biggest bottle of champagne I have ever. It stood like 4 foot high, and so I told Inge he could have it, and then so they of course they only had one award for first place. So I think if I remember right, I said, Inge, you take it, and then London said, we'll send you one. But you know what we got? It was the coolest thing. It was a circular gold medallion, and with two runners in the middle, and Big Ben, the big famous clock in the background. It wasn't like a gigantic trophy or anything like that. And I still got it somewhere around the house somewhere. I'm not sure where.
You're not using it for an anchor on your boat or
no.
How about What did New Balance or Coach Squires? What did they? Yeah, do you remember?
They were super excited, and especially since Chris Brasher was a New Balance distributor for them over in Europe and stuff. And so I remember Jim Davis, the owner of New Balance, called me up and was just, he was like a little kid on the phone. You know, he was so excited, and of course, and you knew Coach Squires, and you know, Coach was just, he was beyond happy and everything, and it was a really, for me, it was a big deal, and at the time it was a really big deal for New Balance and everybody involved.
Well, oh man, I'm getting tired. Let's back up the truck here a little bit. I just want to do a little review. May of 1980, you go to the Olympic trials, you run 2:16:01,
yes,
16th place. You then go to Nike in Eugene, OTC. I think, was that like September 1980?
Yes.
2:15:20. You get 10th place.
Right.
But, you know, you're PRing. You go to New York. Was it early November, late October?
Yeah, late October that year.
You get 9th, run 2:13:55.
Yep.
January, Houston, and now we're into 81. You get 2nd at 2:12:49 behind Bill Rogers.
Right.
Then you go to Beppu 3 weeks later.
Right.
And get 3rd and PR 2:12:41. Finish behind the Sow brothers, who are two of the, I think in 1980 or 81. I think
one was a 2:09 marathon, and the other brother was a 2:10 guy.
Exactly. And then you go to London in May. So we're going from May of 80 to March of 81.
Right.
We're not even talking like 12 months. We're talking like 10 months, Beards. 5 marathons, all PRs, and all pretty much world class.
Yeah, done. I look back on that, and, you know, I mean, I recovered very quickly.
Unbelievable.
And, you know, just like after that, the State of Days 10-miler, you and I were out doing a 20-miler the next day.
I tell you, your physiology, and it'd be great. They should, if they should keep your body for science someday and take look at you genetically. Because, you know, I'll be honest, I ran 11 marathons in my life, and every single one of them beat the heck, I almost said a bad word there, out of my legs. I mean, I would wake up the next day and feel like somebody had taken ball-peen hammers to my quads, my hamstrings, my calves. You know, I think I always ran, I think I got 100% of what I could give on those days, but I would tear myself up. You had I think, you know, I always remember Coach Squires. He talked about your running style, your form.
Yeah.
And he said when Dick Beardsley runs, you hear cherubs playing harps. It's like little cherubs. It's like, it's heavenly. I mean, it's like, and your stride was so easy and light.
I was very
light on the feet.
Very fortunate, Don. You know, it just kind of came natural to me, I guess. But but you know, I'm looking at my logbook. So the day after, the morning after London, I went out for a 6-miler. It's like, and then I did 10 the next day and 10 the next day after that.
I love it.
But Don, I look back and I think, how stupid.
Well,
was I?
At the time, you know, hindsight's always at 20/20.
I know.
You look back, and at the time, you go, "Why not?" I mean, I feel good, and I'm not going to go out and do 20. I'm going to go out and do 6. But it's so much fun to reminisce about this because, you know, when you're living it, you can't believe, you know, we're going to go back in 40 years. We're going to look back and remember some of these times. And now to have that opportunity is just what a treat, you know. And so. Now, you know, and so here we are in late March of 81, and you come back from London, and you have I don't know what kind of reception you got. You know, Mary picks you up at the airport, you go home. Yeah,
done. Here's what happened.
Yeah, what happened?
So I fly from London into somewhere on the East Coast. And that was either the day I landed or the day before something. That's when President Reagan, they tried to assassinate him. Remember,
Hinckley or whatever his name was.
And
tried to shoot him,
that
he did shoot him.
And that Brady guy got shot in the head too. And so, of course, that was crazy back then. But I remember when I flew into the Minneapolis St. Paul International Airport then, and that was when you could walk right down to the gate back then and stuff. And there was a lot of all the TV stations in Minneapolis were there to greet me, and there were some other people with signs holding up, and it was pretty exciting.
Now, were you we're kind of getting late here. We'll just finish up. Were you working? Somebody asked a question on we actually on our website we asked people to send in questions, and somebody came up with and they kind of said, how do the work running life balance, being a world-class athlete, which you are at this point.
Yeah.
But at the same time having to pay bills, because it wasn't there was no prize money above the table. And like Bill alluded to, he ran like 25 road races a year just to make $500 a race and then a marathon to kind of get a bigger paycheck. What were you doing to help support yourself?
So I was running twice a day. We lived in that little one-bedroom apartment. Yeah. And so Mary worked, she worked full-time at a bank, and I worked, kind of part-time. I remember when I first started working at a Foot Locker store.
Right.
And so one day the regional manager comes in, and he brings me out into the mall area, and we sit down, and when he bends over, a pack of cigarettes fall out of his. You wore those referee shirts.
I love it, yes.
He goes, Dick, because if I had a lunch hour, I'd go out for a run. And he goes, I remember him talking to me. He goes, your running's never going to go anywhere for you. He said, I know you love to run, but it ain't going to go anywhere for you. He says, if you really worked hard, you could be a manager of a Foot Locker store.
Someday.
And when he told me that, I resigned. I quit that day.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I quit that day. And then Gary Bjorklund, a great runner from Minnesota, had like 4 or 5, 6 running stores called GBS, Gary Bjorklund Sports. And so I knew Gary a little bit, and so I went and I started selling running shoes and working, not full time, but probably 3, 4, 5 hours a day because I was training hard in the morning, training hard again in the afternoon, and then I had to get to bed early, and that little extra income, as we all. The 4 of us all got together all the time. None of us were bringing in big. We weren't eating filet mignon every night. That's for sure. Exactly.
He could stretch $20 a long, long
Absolutely.
way. And Gary Bjorklund's name is going to come up probably more in the next episode. No, Gary. Just if people don't know who Gary Bjorklund is, he was a phenom from Minnesota, Twig, Minnesota.
Right near Duluth.
Wasn't it 406 mile in high school? I mean,
I think it was Mikey. I think it was 401.
It was off the charts.
1969 on a dirt track.
It was not under great conditions. So the guy had phenomenal natural talent.
Absolutely.
And went on to the University of Minnesota, had an outstanding career. He finished second to Prefontaine at the NCAA cross country one year, which was a great race. And then he made the 1976 Olympic team at 10,000 meters, running with one shoe. At the Olympic trials. Yeah, one of his spikes got taken off in the race. It happened to me once in a cross-country
race.
And he ran with one shoe on and one shoe off and made the Olympic team. And you talk about a stud. Let's just be honest.
Done. Yeah. I think Minnesota's kicked out some really world-class athletes in running over the years. To me, Gary was the best distance runner, I think, ever to come out of Minnesota. I remember when I started kind of moving up the chain a little bit, and we'd run a 10K in Minneapolis, and him and a guy named Mike Slack, they were training partners, and when they showed up at a race, the rest of us were running for third. Honest to gosh.
They called them the Minnesota Twins because they were so dominant, and Mike
Unbelievable.
Slack ran for North Dakota State and used to run against South Dakota State and all that, but we got some great stories coming up.
Great stories
about Gary Bjorklund
coming
and
up.
The fact that then you were working for him, and he probably was a pretty nice boss because he understood the runner's mind frame.
Right.
And you were there to try to make ends meet, and I'm sure he was probably going to help you with that. But
and Gary's name was on the store. He was hardly ever at the store because he was traveling, racing a lot and stuff. But yeah, there was a few times. I got to run with him a few times in training and things like that. So, but that's something in some upcoming episodes we'll get into all that.
I can't wait. Beards, I finished these talks with you. I kind of feel like I got to go lay down for a little while.
I know, me too.
It's emotionally exhausting, which is a good thing. I'm having a world of fun.
Well, Dunn, it's been a lot of fun. And I tell you what, folks, we want to thank everyone for listening. It is true enjoyment for Dunn and I to do this every week. And if you have any questions for me or Dunn, please, leave some comments. You can contact us directly at our website at beardsanddunpod.com, or please leave us a comment on our Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter pages, all at Beards and Dunn Pod.
Yeah, and of course, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the neat T-shirt I have on.
Yeah, isn't that awesome?
Yeah, the merchandise. If you enjoy what you're doing here and you want to support us a little bit, we've got some merchandise out there on our website, and I've had a good time. I like wearing this stuff. It's a lot of fun. I actually had somebody ask me who was Beards and Dunn the other day. I had to explain it to them. But anyway, if you're watching on YouTube, or hit that subscribe and like button. We'd love to hear more from you. And hey, Beards, thanks for taking a little time out of your day to chit-chat.
Well, Dunn. It's so much fun being able to reminisce like this, and
we got more.
I tell you what, I couldn't imagine doing it with a better buddy than you. So we'll talk next week, pal.
See you soon.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye bye.